Alright, so this is my Repti temp 500R. I'm just going to go make this video quick. Using it with the Rickys Reptile Enclosure is a little tricky. I'm sure it could be tricky with others as well. The bad part about this is that whenever using it, there is no numbers with it. All it has is just this little guide here and a little green arrow that shows you. It has a really high side, a little yellow line here for, I guess, medium, and then over on the left side it's low. Alright, so you have the normal plug in here for, well, actually you have two plugs here for two different heat sources. With the Rickys Reptile Enclosure, all you need is the heat mat, which is right underneath here, and then of course you have the probe. The probe goes in the back behind here. You really can't see it there, and then it comes through a hole in the Rickys Reptile Enclosure, which is right there. While that's there, there is I went ahead and taped mine right under here, like right here. I realize you really can't see it, but setting this up, it's kind of difficult and it's slightly harder to do, again, because you don't actually have numbers to go by. So what I did was I took my thermometer and I put the probe underneath of the substrate at first, just to see what the temp was, to make sure it was working like that. And then what I did was I took the thermometer and I stuck it just above this, and once it got to a temp and I saw that it stopped, like say if you wanted to stay around 85, right now it's at 87, you would go up to your little temp and you would turn it down. Currently mine just turned back on because it's heating back up. That's what the little green light means. I found that you have to turn the thermostat up just a little bit higher than what you would want to normally, because it does have to go through the substrate to warm that up a bit. And then once I did that, and I found out, because again it was a little tricky at first, trying to figure out how in the world you're going to keep it up without it seeming too high. Underneath the substrate, it's probably close to about 100. Let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and stick the probe pretty good in there, all the way down, and cover it up here. The temp is currently at 89, and it should be rising here shortly. I have, of course, the cold side right around 78 and the humidity around 57, and the room temperature is 81, so that's warming up. This is another type of thermostat you can use, which it actually has the numbers on it that shows you what's going on. This is a Zilla, and again it just has the probe, which is right down in there up top. This thick line coming down is that, and it works quite well with that. Of course, this is the home of my king snake, which is currently letting his food digest, which so is Nagini, that's in here. She's back there under her log. So now we're up to 91. So it's slowly rising. Again, it just turned on, so it hasn't been on, because once the temp gets to a regular setting, the thermostat doesn't always kick on and off. And I mean, it works great, after you get it set up and where you need it to be. It's a pain to get it there sometimes, especially not knowing what you had to do with it. I just fooled around with it, and it doesn't actually, the probe itself does not fit into the Rickys Reptile Enclosure. There's a rubber piece on the probe that I actually cut off, and then I taped back on after I got it back, or once I got it through the hole. It's big enough for the probe itself to go through, just not the rubber piece in the back of it. So, while that was working on that right there, I went ahead and did what I explained earlier with the putting the thermometer, and then figuring out how to mess around with all that stuff. And now I'm just gonna again shoot this real quick just to kind of show what's going on. And in order to have a decent temp on top of the substrate, you need the temp below the substrate to be a little bit higher, and that's something else that you have to learn. And it's kind of difficult to think about because then you're like, oh well, then what if the substrate comes out and then it's going to burn my snake? Oh, really, it's not going to burn your snake. It's going to be a little bit warmer for it, yeah, but they know that they can move, and if it really is going to bother them, they will let you know by actually moving. I mean, because the heat mat again covers such a large area, that they can move to a spot that does not have substrate. And even if that was the case, if they felt they were too warm or threatened like that, then I'm sure they would go over to the cool side and again get away from the heat or whatever it is that's causing them harm. And right now we're up to 93.2, and it is still on, which again, that's what the little green light means. Now, I know that whenever I first did this, it was staying underneath the substrate. It was in the upper 90s, and with the upper 90s underneath of the substrate keeps the top of the substrate between 88 and 94. Usually it does not hit 94, but it did a few times. I also think that has a lot to do with the room temperatures itself and all like that. So it's still warming up, but we're at 93.5. So it's still climbing. So I'm going to go ahead and shut it off. And what's going to happen with this thermostat, it works just like any other type of thermostat. Once it reaches a certain temp, and this is the really only way to know what the numbers are exactly, compared to the other one that I showed you, like that actually has numbers showing you. I have that one set to about 85, so every time that my thermostat's, once that probe hits 85 degrees, it shuts off. Now, the way this one worked was that once it hit the temp that I needed it to, once it reached the temp that I needed it to, it shut off, and then I kept it right around that ballpark range. And again, it takes a little bit to fool around with it, but once you tweak it and you get it to where you need it to be, it's going to work great for you, and you won't have any problems. Now, if you don't feel like going through all that mess, then don't get it. But again, I haven't had any problems with it, and I actually got it because I saw it in one of the other videos for the Rickys Reptile Enclosures. So again, we're climbing up to a 94 right now, and it's soon, it'll probably be a little bit higher. But then, even then, once I pull this out of the substrate, and I mean, I can feel that on the substrate, it's warm in here. And as that goes on, it's going to be dropping again in temp, so it's at 93. And even though that's dropping, that's only because it brought up to the top, it's still heating up. So again, the bottom of the substrate is going to be a little bit more, and that temperature has not yet been met, which once that temperature is met, then the top of the substrate temperature is then met. And now we're back down to 92. So that's going to probably stay right around 88, 89, and 90, somewhere in that range. Usually doesn't really peak up into the 90s, really, but I have had it again up to the 94.5 area. So this again, just a quick little video of the Repti Temp 500R, just showing that it does take a little bit to mess with and to make you and the snake happy, of course. So it looks like it's going to probably stay right around 91, which and that's fine. That's actually a good side, or rather a good temp for the warm side. That's going to provide the snake with as much warmth as it needs. And oh, they just dropped down to 90. So yeah, with a good, nice little radiant like that, this thermostat definitely provides it for you. So thanks for watching. If this helped you, thanks. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I do not mind answering anything. Feel free to message, comment, like it, do whatever you'd like to. Alright? Well, thanks again for watching, and you guys have a good one.